Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of 5 Elements of Success Player Development Series. I'm Roger Nick, your host and founder of Junior Golf Hub. This week we're going to continue on the tournament prep for the summer, and we're going to talk about the mid-season equipment changes, so we'll get to that shortly. Before, we're going to talk about COVID-19, staying safe. I know you guys are playing tournaments, you're traveling, just make sure that you're prepared or prepare yourself on keeping yourself safe from others while you're out there on the golf course and around hotels. So just make sure that you're aware of the restrictions also when it comes to the travel, keeping yourself from being quarantined if you don't have to. So just travel to those safe places if you can. As always, we want to make sure that we're keeping this interactive. Send in your questions, comments, or concerns to 5 Elements at the Golf Performance Center. Also, we have a pop quiz this week. We're going to be talking about how often do you change your grips per season or throughout the season. How often should you change your grips throughout the season? We're going to reveal that answer later in the show. The winner of that pop quiz is going to get a Golf Performance Center golf bag. So it's going to be a great golf bag for you to play the rest of your season with. So again, stay tuned. We'll have that later in the show. Let me introduce our co-host, Tyler Campbell, Director of Performance here at the Golf Performance Center. Also, Dennis Hillman, Director of Coaching here at the Golf Performance Center. Welcome, guys.
Thanks, Rob.
And again, make sure that we're COVID-19 safe in here. We're keeping our social distance. Make sure you guys are doing the same out there. All right, Tyler, why don't you talk about last week? Let's do a recap.
Yeah, we had a great episode last week. For anybody who's joining us for the first time, all episodes are available on juniorgolfhub.com/5elements. They're also available on our YouTube page, the Golf Performance Center. Make sure you subscribe, follow all of our social media channels. Last week we talked about tournament prep. We had Alex Hume on, our tournament director here at GPC. He was giving us some insight into some of the different levels of tournaments that are out there. So the way we like to look at it with our juniors, starting off with our level 1 events, which we refer to essentially as local events. They're 1 day, maybe 9-hole events to just get some tournament experience before they graduate into those level 2 events, which are really more regional events. The fields are a little stronger. They might be 2-day events. And then, if your skills start to develop, your golf skills come around, then level 3 events are the ultimate goal. You want to ultimately be playing on the national stage, and that's something everybody should be shooting for. But I think one thing that Alex pointed out was how important it is to be playing the right level event at the right time in your development. And you guys can talk about that a little bit later on. We also talked about the physical component and how far in advance you have to start preparing yourself physically to be able to perform at a high level throughout the season. So, here at GPC, we really start in September for the following spring and summer, just making sure we're moving well, educating our juniors on proper nutrition, and so forth. So that's what we covered last week. We got a little bit more of that this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tyler. It's a great recap. Again, we're going to talk more about tournament preparation, kind of mid-tournament and also post-tournament activities. Dennis, we're going to talk more about that as we get started. Yep. And if you're talking to your juniors about what you do prior to going into tournament events, what are you talking about?
Yeah, so I think I think you guys did a great job last week, and Alex did a great job kind of recapping the list and all the important things that are really relevant to preparing, to peak for that tournament and to peak and be prepared for that day. So it's a lot. It's really everything from equipment to being physically prepared to being mentally prepared with visualization, really everything in the 5 elements and just being at your peak in all those areas.
Yeah, I know a little bit later on the show we're going to bring in Nick Novak, talk about the equipment and kind of that mid-season kind of checkup, if you will. But one of the things out there last week, we had some questions about the dynamic warm-up. I know we do a dynamic warm-up with all our juniors, and it's kind of quite interesting to see when we're out on the tee line having 15 or so juniors doing their dynamic warm-up. Get quite a few looks. So.
Oh yeah. We've seen that quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry about that. We only have Tyler actually show that because the questions last week was, hey, we got it, but we didn't know what they look like. So Tyler, if you could kind of go through and show us the examples of those exercises.
Absolutely will, Roger. Before we get going, I can't reiterate enough how important the dynamic warm-up is. Don't undervalue the importance of physically warming up before you go to the range and start hitting golf balls. We need to get the blood flowing. The body's going to be much more receptive to the information that you're getting through your golf warm-up prior to your round if you make sure you warm up your body physically first. You look at other athletes in the NBA and the NFL, they're out there on the field hours before they actually, maybe even before we're in the stadiums, going through their physical warm-up. And then obviously they go back in the locker room, they'll come back out and get more into their sport-specific warm-up, if you will. So let's go through the dynamic warm-up here as a group,
Before you get
guys.
started on that,
Sure.
let's talk about Phil Mickelson and Tiger Woods. They're notorious for their long, early morning, workouts and then going out to the golf course and then coming back.
No, absolutely.
So it's really important that I think the golfers out there know that you are doing a rigorous activity. So making sure you're ready for it.
I think on tour these days, guys it's routine for folks to be showing up 2 or 3 hours before. Now, on the junior level, that might not necessarily be where we are just yet, but they're getting treatment physically. They're getting, as Nick's going to talk about, the equipment trucks are working on making fine-tuning some last-minute adjustments on their equipment stuff as well. So there's a lot that goes into the big stage, and when we want to put our skills to the test.
And playing your best golf. I mean, right? Ultimately, we're all just trying to play our best golf.
You got it.
So why don't you show us those exercises?
Scooch this back here just a little bit. All right, so really all you're going to need to do our dynamic warm-up, guys, is a golf club. So we'll just have you take your driver head cover off, and essentially, if there's a mat at the range or if there's a curb or some elevated grass, we're going to start off doing 10 bodyweight squats. Now, this whole dynamic warm-up is really meant to be pretty upbeat, all right? We want to make sure that we're getting the heart rate up, getting the blood flowing. So here you'll notice my stance width is about hip width apart. The bar's directly over my head, all right? And I'm go ahead and drop my hips a little lower than knee level. So again, if you can do that with your heels flat, that's ideal. Otherwise, go ahead and elevate your heels slightly on a surface, and that's going to, again, just kind of get every joint in the body moving.
Well, also with that, Tyler, you're trying to also make sure you get those joints, kind of those ankles obviously loosened up, those calves stretched out, obviously knee flexion.
If you look at the squat, it's really taking everything into account. So you've got, stability of the foot, mobility of the ankle, stability of the knee, hip range of motion, spine range of motion. The upper body's getting opened up through holding that club overhead. So, the squat's really, when it comes to
sounds like everything in the golf
yeah,
swing.
It's everything we need to get moving. So once we go through 10 body weight squats, next we're going to go through 10 toe touches. Now, when we do this, again, club's going to be overhead, feet are about hip width. I'm going to show you down the line here because I want to focus on getting my shoulder blades behind my heels, all right? And then I'm going to hinge from the hip, bend down and touch the toes. All right, so my shoulder blades are behind the heels. So often we're driving to these golf tournaments. We might be asleep in the back seat. Maybe we're in this flexed position. Maybe we're listening to music or texting our friends, on these long drives. And we're in this flexed spinal position so often. It's good to counteract that, counterbalance it through a little bit of extension. All right, so the next exercise is going to be a split stance torso rotation. All right, so go ahead and take your golf posture. Place it directly across your shoulder line. You don't necessarily need it down in your chest because you can cheat that way. I want it up across your shoulder line, and then you're going to just drop one foot back, just a little bit behind you. Keeping all your weight on that front leg, I want you to rotate towards that front leg, all right, without moving the lower body. So your belt buckle and your lower body is staying stable. Now I did that slow. Ideally we want to be adding a little bit more tempo, all right, just to get that blood moving. We'll go a few more reps on the left side for you.
And Tyler, where's the focus there? So where do you want the...
so I've got like a 90-10 weight distribution front to back. I've got the majority of my weight is on my lead leg. My knee is quiet right over my laces. And my goal is going to be to keep my belt buckle still. Whether or not, it stays still will be a sign of my level of stability in general. But essentially, we want to keep that lower body nice and quiet.
Yeah, and you're really trying to get that thoracic spine, kind of moving.
Yeah, 100%. So as I mentioned, if folks are cheating, having the bar down here, you can move that club without rotating. So you want to keep it up across your shoulder line and really feel it right between the shoulder blades as though, you're moving through your thoracic region.
Great.
Next, we're in the split stance overhead reach. So in that same position now, still keeping that weight on that forward leg, I'm going to reach back and towards the leg that's in front. All right, and I'm just going to alternate, reach back towards the leg that's in front. This is getting the hip flexor stretched out. Again, if we've been sitting as we're traveling. All right, you're doing 5 to 10 of these on each side. Today, for the sake of time, we're just doing a few reps. Last but certainly not least now, we're going to take our driver, all right, and you're going to do 10 speed swings right and 10 speed swings left. All right, so again, club head covers off, and my goal here is just to create as much speed as possible, not worrying about where the ball is going. And then we also have to train our non-dominant side. Okay, so I'm here. Good. And one more.
In these, Tyler, you're going as fast as you can. Correct?
I know that didn't look very fast, Roger, but I was absolutely going as fast as I could. All right, so You can hear I'm now, my heart rate's elevated, the blood's moving, and that didn't take but 4 or 5 minutes. It might look a little goofy on the range, but you guys need to get over that because our goal is to perform at a high level, all right? So give that a shot. Let us know.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. That's great. And I think that's one of the things out there. You want to make sure that you're actually, going through this. And as Tyler said, I think a lot of times we get a little unnerved by people watching us and seeing us do these activities. But listen, you're out there to perform your best, and this is the best way to give yourself the best chance to hit the shots that you're looking to hit out there on the golf course. So let's make sure you're doing that. And I know, Dennis, we talk about that a lot with our guys, how getting comfortable being uncomfortable, and this is a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's, if you believe this is the best thing for you, you just got to get out there and do it. And, regardless of what people are, we'll get a lot of different looks, when our kids are out there. When we have a big group at a tournament and they're 12 or 15 going through the dynamic warm-up at the same time, draw some looks. Why are they doing that? What are they doing? Really, it's to prepare yourself, to do something athletic like the game of golf. So it's important.
Yeah. Now, the other part of this, getting ready for tournaments and being in kind of mid-season is the equipment part of things, right? So we're going to bring in Nick Novak and talk about that mid-season checkup. But what are some of the things that you kind of asked Nick to do as one of your coaches here, to look for when the players are getting ready?
Well, I think, it's a constant process. It's a very fluid process. So I think people don't realize that it's not just this fixed thing, hey, I'm going to get my equipment right and it'll stay that way for a long time, particularly when we talk about juniors. So, juniors out there, you're growing. If you're training, you're getting stronger, you're moving the club faster. If your swing is changing, the equipment's going to need to change with that. So we want to do, as often as quarterly checkups. So.
Yeah. Well, let's welcome in Nick Novak. Nick, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Nick is our director of custom clubs here at the Golf Performance Center and also one of our lead coaches. So as you see juniors playing, some of the things that you identify as far as equipment is concerned, obviously mainly golf ball, maybe golf clubs, but what should the juniors and parents understand about the equipment for junior golfers?
Yeah, tournament season is really what it's all about. And, just like a car going in for an oil change for some preventative maintenance, we like to do the same thing with our juniors. You go through these regular checkups to make sure everything is going the way it's supposed to instead of playing defense when something goes wrong. So, we have our juniors come in periodically throughout the tournament season for gapping analysis to make sure the clubs are going as far as they should or as far as they're used to. Sometimes kids are growing stronger, and so the ball can kind of sail on them a little bit as the season wears on. We look at their grips, really. A lot of these kids are practicing really hard, playing a lot of golf. I would say, you're probably going to change your grips 2 to 4 times a summer in the middle of peak season, because some clubs you use a lot more on the range, and so those clubs might need to be changed a little more often. Some clubs you don't maybe use as much. So
yeah, you're going to show us some examples of that, but thanks for the reminder on the oil change. My oil light's on in my car, so let me make sure I take that in right after the show.
Care of.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. So as you're talking about that, the equipment in, you talk a lot about the DNA and what we do with juniors as they come in, to start their journey, if you will, with the Golf Performance Center. And when we're working with them as a coach, is that you go through a whole assessment of their equipment so that you know kind of where they start and then what might be happening throughout their development, if you will.
Absolutely. Every person that comes through the Custom Clubs Bay gets a DNA test on their clubs, and we check the loft, the lie, the shaft, the flex, the weight, the swing weight, and the grip and the grip size. And it's really a nice baseline. A lot of times someone may not have a club in their bag that they like, or a club that doesn't, for some reason they don't have a great relationship with the club, and you spec it out and there's something different about it. So it's nice to check and get some validation that maybe it wasn't you, maybe the club was a different swing weight than the rest of the set. So that DNA test is really important, and we do it for everybody.
Yeah, I always like to say you got to have a good relationship with your clubs, and it's one of the most important relationships you're going to have, especially as a golfer, right? I know my 6-iron is my best friend, and I know that grip gets re-gripped often.
That's a great point, though. I think sometimes we'll see issues with course management. Why a junior might play a hole the wrong way, and a lot of times it's kind of like almost this subconscious, like they don't have a good relationship with their hybrid or their 3-wood, which was the right club, and they choose not to use it. So that's important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So as far as the equipment is concerned, we know, again, coming into, preseason, if you will, for tournaments, and then we get into in-season, kids aren't always swinging their best, or adults aren't always swinging their best early in the spring and summer, but they get into that mid-season form. Is there a time that you would look at and say, well, the equipment is okay, or maybe it's not okay and I need to make that adjustment? Would you make that adjustment right away, or would you wait until something happens, further in the summer?
Yeah, I think it's a case-by-case scenario, but for the most part, we'll adjust it, and we'll adjust it and test it. I mean, we're not going to wait to fix something on their club if their equipment has an issue or there's gapping in there. We want them to have the right tools for the job right away. That's kind of the whole purpose of the quarterly evaluations, is to make sure that we get it before it gets bad, or before they have to play a hole differently to stay away from a club that they don't like.
Yeah, and the big part of that too, from the coaching perspective, is we're looking at this and saying, well, listen, we know these kids are in development phases, right? So it's not like it's not a means to an end to win tomorrow. Yeah. It's making sure that we're, one, giving them the confidence in their equipment to go out to perform their best, to gain further confidence, if you will, in their abilities to grow and develop.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's, I just had the question yesterday from one of our juniors. I think Nick fit him into a new shaft, and he said, should I do this for the next tournament? And I said, what's your hesitation, right? Yeah. Well, I kind of know my clubs. Well, you know the clubs that don't fit you, right? So I think, a lot of times we hear that question, and really, I think it's a fluid process. So, when there's something that needs to be changed, go ahead and change it.
Yeah, and that's hard though. I mean, because again, it makes me uncomfortable, and most players don't want to be uncomfortable. So, so Nick, that's part of the equipment side. You're looking at loft and lies, and how often do you check those? And I know, you just said quarterly, right? You don't want to go beyond that, really. Yeah. But it's also dependent on how much you're practicing and playing. Yeah. But it also maybe depends on the surface. Maybe somebody's at a driving range, and maybe it's a little firmer, mats and different things. So those lofts might be changing more often. Maybe the lies are changing more often. So is that something that you also take into consideration, or you would say, hey, look at the conditions you're practicing under?
Yeah, along with the DNA test, we also interview anyone who walks through the custom clubs bay. We give them a full interview, and we try to establish a nice open relationship, so that way they can tell us, hey, my 7-iron's doing something different than it usually does. It seems to be going left or right. And then we'll check the loft and lies, because during the summer there's a lot of travel, and the clubs are thrown into the trunk, taken out of the trunk, and maybe on an airplane, and something can happen. Shafts bend, heads bend, and so it's nice to just check it. If you feel like something is up, we try to have an open dialogue with the students so they can come to us if they feel like something's not right.
Yeah, and a safe environment. We also talk about the clubs, maybe a little too hard a love tap on the ground. Maybe occasionally some players, we get that as well.
Things happen out there.
So we understand those things happen. So just make sure you're taking care of your clubs, because they're going to take care of you out there on the golf course. But it's more than the club. So you're talking about golf ball. I know earlier episode we talked about what a good golf ball fit would be and why that's important. But that's equipment, right? Having that right equipment, is important. So how do you actually find the right fit for a golf ball?
Yeah, we take them out there on the course, on the green grass, and where the rubber meets the road, with real greens and real shots. We go in the bunkers, and we start from the green and work our way back with that approach. And golf balls are changing every year. A high spin ball might be a low spin ball the next year, and a high ball flight ball might be a lower ball flight ball. So there's always a new version of the ball coming out. So I think it's important, if you're normally a guy that plays the low spin ball, go ahead and get it checked every year before the season starts and throughout the year. If your ball's not holding the green, or maybe it's spinning off the green too much, like I said, have an open dialogue and talk to the coaches and say, I think I'm having a hard time holding the greens, or they seem to be spinning more than they used to, and we'll do a ball fitting.
Yeah, I know for you, Dennis, I know you get a good chance when you're talking to players and traveling to tournaments, and between you and Wally and Alex, the coaches here, talk about, hey, what happens out there, and you can come back and easily, say to Nick, hey, Nick, I'm seeing this. They may be telling you one thing, but I'm actually seeing this.
Yeah, I think that is helpful. Us being on the road at these tournaments with our juniors is really helpful, because we get to see objectively what's actually happening. Again, a lot of players come off the course and they feel one thing, or maybe they recall certain things that maybe bother them, bad tee shots or whatever it may be. But we can objectively kind of give that feedback on what we saw, and if there's an equipment issue, again, back to my course management example, or just seeing a ball flight with too much spin or not enough spin, actually watching a ball come into the green from the green gives you a different perspective as well. So
yeah. And I know, and we talk a lot about this, and we hear tour players all the time talking about this tweak of the their equipment, maybe a little ball tweak or changing golf ball, changing wedges based on conditions, things like that. So that's really important that you understand, and back to your DNA of that equipment is going, do you have the right equipment for the golf courses that you guys are picking to play? And obviously playing in tournaments, it's really important to kind of know what type of golf course you're playing too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Nick can speak to it at the highest level. They'll change according to the course. If the fairways are tighter or the maybe the bunkers are firmer, they'll adjust the bounce on their wedges or their set makeup. Or maybe there's some long par threes or long holes, they need that extra long club. So you definitely see men and women that do that, change the set makeup.
And you probably see that as well with the juniors coming in, and you talk to them about it, and because bounce makes a huge difference when you've got firm sand or firm conditions versus fluffy and soft conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. And the sand is a big, it's a big factor in the wedge. Every course has different sand usually in the area, and if a course has sand that's playing really firm that week, you might want a different bounce, a different grind, a different wedge, maybe a different plan of attack. And like Dennis mentioned before, a lot of tour players have 15 or 16 clubs that they kind of have in a rotation that they'll use for different courses. So they want to make sure they have the right tools for the job for that day. Yeah,
that's awesome. So Nick, let's talk about the grips. Can you show us a good example of what a good, maybe a worn grip looks like, and why, how do you identify that? Because some people may not even know. Maybe they just think, hey, it's all good.
So when you have a grip that's a little worn, it'll have a little shine to it, a little gloss here, like this one does. So this grip needs to be replaced, and it's on a wedge.
Can you raise that up a little bit so the camera can see? There you go.
Okay, so you see a nice shine on there, and so that grip, that's on a wedge. Wedges obviously get a lot of use. You chip and putt a lot, throughout the round and in practice usually. And this would be a newer grip. See, no shine on that. Nice.
Hold the grip up. There you go.
Nice color there. No shine.
That must be a new one. That must be one of your new TaylorMade drivers.
It's a good one. Yeah. It's fun. Yeah, we got some new toys. Yeah. Really excited.
I'm a Callaway guy myself, but
yeah. Great. It's a great time to be in the equipment game. I mean, you're seeing a lot of really cool stuff happening out there. So from all the manufacturers, you're getting everyone's best punch.
Yeah, and it's not like it's huge variability in these OEM companies, right? As far as the quality of the product, it's all pretty darn good.
It's going to be really good across the board. Yep. It's just finding something that fits your eye, the look, the sound, the feel.
Well, you mentioned something that I think is very interesting: sound. And I think we talk about golf ball and what the golf ball feels like, but I think what we really know is what it sounds like, right? Is it soft? Is it firm? Is it hard? Is it clicky? Those kind of things. And I think, out there, I mean, try different ones, and you'll start to notice that maybe you're judging the ball on sound and not what it really feels like. And we talk about this tour players all the time. You do a blind test, they almost don't even know the difference if you take away the hearing. They don't know what the ball is, right? I mean,
that's interesting. No, I do agree with that. You can definitely hear a dramatic difference in sound from a firm ball or a range ball to the old Balata balls were had a much softer sound. So for sure.
Yeah, you didn't even hear those. It was like a pillow fight, right?
That's right.
But Nick, so we got the equipment. You know what a good grip looks like and a bad grip. How to regrip. What about golf glove? What would you do with a golf glove? How would you know and fit a good golf glove?
Yeah, so a golf glove is going to be really important. I mean, a lot of players are using them on every shot, full swing shots, and then some players take them off around the green. Some leave them on. Lexi Thompson leaves it on. Jack Nicklaus left it on, but. It's something that you see now in every kid's bag, in every kid's hand, and in their back pocket, and you almost very rarely see a person playing without a glove. And the most important thing is having enough for the day and having a backup, a spare, have one that fits you the right way. The glove's going to grow on you a little bit, so you don't want the Velcro going too far over because it's going to stretch and grow on you a little bit, so you want to leave some room for growth. Make sure it's got a nice snug fit.
Yeah. Now there's different materials, right? You got leather, you've got pleather, you've got synthetic, right? I mean, and they're all good now, and it's all depending on some people have a practice glove and some people have a gamer,
absolutely.
And what that feels like, and so those feels could be slightly different. So it's probably important that you actually look at it and say, hey, what do I like when I'm playing my best, and which one's going to give me the best grip on the club, because that's what you're ultimately trying to do.
Absolutely.
Right. Dennis, do you have any preference as far as what you tell players to do as far as, hey, is there a preference in glove? Is there a preference in ball? Is there something that, from a coach's perspective, you're going, hey, go see the guys in custom clubs because?
Yeah, for sure. We're constantly monitoring it and looking for things that they may not realize. As you said, they're not aware that there's something off. The ball, we're looking for trajectory, right? We're with our eye and observing things out there, and then we want to go get the real measurement to find out what's going on. When you talk about all the other parts of equipment, gloves and shoes, and all these things are relevant. We'll look a lot at shoes. We want to make sure that they're playing with consistent shoes, right? They're not playing in their, they'll show up in practice some days in their sneakers, and then in their golf shoes another day, or they'll go putt in their sneakers and not realize that you're a different height and you have different traction. So. A lot of it's consistency. The preference, I think, is we have to work through together and see what works for them.
Yeah, and one of those things, and I know you just mentioned the shoes and the different heights of sneakers versus your golf shoes, is where the pressure is in the ground and how that really affects what's happening in their posture, then obviously path and so forth. Yeah,
we'll see a lot. Right here with our swing catalyst gives us a lot of great feedback on what's happening at the ground level. As we've talked about, our primary fundamentals, ground forces is so important, how you leverage the ground to move athletically. So a lot of times we'll see in these sneakers and shoes, some golf shoes that are built up in the heel too much, it kind of presets you towards your toes, and it makes it, I think, harder to leverage the ground the right way and stay in posture.
Yeah. So your recommendation as a coach, to the custom clubs really is kind of going, okay, how often should, throughout the year, should they be, you recommend doing grips and club checkups?
Exactly. So I think no more than quarterly for sure, and then anything in between that we notice that, hey, we need to take a closer look, whether it comes from the player or comes from the coach. Again, it could be observed in different ways, but we need to look deeper into this.
Yeah, and a lot of times it just depends on how much they're practicing, where they're practicing at, right? I mean, so anywhere between 2 and 4, times they should at least get their grips done and do a checkup with their clubs.
Absolutely.
So that's good. So Nick, I know we had a question, a pop quiz early in the show that was, how often do you actually change your grips throughout the season? And I think we want to announce that winner right now.
We do, and the winner is James Mack.
James Mack, all right. Great job, James. All right, so Nick, that's so appreciative to come in and talk about the equipment, why mid-season checkup is important, but also just making sure that you're following some type of order, if you will, to make sure, hey, I'm always ready to play my best. Again, part of the 5 elements is having the right equipment for the task, and if your equipment, you've outgrown it, maybe it's too big for you, but just checking and making sure those things are always good is going to be so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, awesome. Thanks so much. Dennis, the equipment side of things for us is so important that we get that right, because again, that's how they're hitting the golf ball. They got to have the equipment, right? But now we're talking, pre-round, mid-round, and post-round kind of analysis. Part of the continuation of tournament golf and tournament analysis. So let's talk a little bit about what you talked to. I know you were on assignment last week at an AJGA event, seeing your players. So as you were there, probably pre-round or maybe in the practice round, you were probably giving some feedback. What was that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were out on the course, so a lot of it was just one, and I think you guys highlighted it last week. Alex did a good job of recapping some important things in the pre-round phase or day before. So really paying attention to the golf course, so not playing for score. In fact, actually finding those hole locations if they're marked out and just hitting chips and pitches to those, I think is probably the number one most important thing you can do. Number 2 is focusing on the tee shot. So it's not, oh, I'm going to hit a 3-wood on this hole. No, it's, hey, I need to hit it, X amount of distance in this on this line. This is the kind of the area I want to get it to, because you don't know where the tees are going to be or what the wind is going to be or what the temperature is going to be, let's say. So really tee shots and green complexes are a big part of the focus. Getting those elevation changes if you can. So really just in general, just focusing on the course versus really your own game, as weird as that may sound to some players.
Yeah, and I think part of that too is going out there and looking at the golf course. You're getting to the green. Once you get to the green, looking back at the hole. I know, a lot of times we'll talk to players about playing the hole from the green back to the tee box.
Sure.
Really kind of opens their eyes of how the hole is supposed to be played.
That's fantastic. I mean, there's stories of, whether it's true or not, there's stories of Ben Hogan walking courses backwards, right? No clubs, just really focusing on the course and getting that perspective. So we always talk about that. You get to the green, look back, and just spend some time. You'd be better off spending 2 minutes there than maybe even hitting a couple extra shots and just observing and getting as much detail into your memory as you can.
Yeah, having that awareness of what's going to happen and getting yourself kind of feeling those emotions of how you want to play these shots are really important.
Right.
So now you've gone kind of pre-round and mid-round. What are some of the words of wisdom you give to your juniors about, hey, what should they be focusing on while they're going through the round?
Yeah, so well, let's pre-round also. I wanted to highlight pre-round. So a couple of things we see the day of getting ready, and you can actually YouTube tour players and their pre-round warm-up. So dynamic warm-up, number one. They may be doing a workout or really getting themselves physically ready. But putting first, I think, is really important. So putting, obviously going in the range and hitting some golf balls, chipping, and then coming back and putting again. So a lot of times we'll see juniors get stuck at the range if that's what they do first. They don't like the way they're swinging, don't feel good about it, and just keep kind of hitting balls and end up with 2 minutes to putt. So that's number one. Putt first after your dynamic warm-up.
They work themselves up into a frenzy.
Yeah, that's right. We've all been there. I mean, and absolutely. So, unless you believe that if you hit it poorly on the range, you play better, which we hear that a lot too, right? So, sometimes it works.
Reverse psychology, maybe.
That's right. So, but mid-round, again, it's really just to stick to your process, which your process really relies on the information that you've really gathered the day before on the golf course. So you can keep coming back to, what am I focusing on here? Not, the last shot or the frustration I have or my swing doesn't feel right. Okay, that's fine, but I need to find a way based on, the information I have about the course and where I need to focus on this shot. So, I think that's really where we try to get their mindset.
Yeah, because stressing over that really just leads to tension. Tension leads to kind of, not apprehension of how I want to swing and blocking the good thoughts of, hey, this is where I want to be versus I'm afraid to hit it over here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that it just kind of spirals, right? It's like a lot of things. It's just cyclical. So if you can, the more you can just train yourself to bring your mind back to the golf course, right? It's like golf is played, out there in front of you. It's not, just play it here in this box where you swing. It's played out there.
Yeah, I know we're going to be talking with Dr. Josh Brandt next week more about the mental game and the things that we do and how you guys coach players through this process. But also kind of now you talk about during round process, post round. So what's so important about the post round analysis that helps you as a coach and helps the player?
Yeah, that's where I think a lot of the learning takes place, and Dr. Brandt can talk about it more. So really you can go on juniorgolfhub.com if you've got a profile, right? Get on there, and what we have for our athletes here at the GPC Academy is their stat sheet is there. So they go on and they input their stats after each round. So maybe many of you are doing that, and we'll talk about why we think it's important. It's not just a means to an end of getting fairways hit, greens hit. How many putts. Those are good numbers to have as just kind of a general comparison of different parts of your game. But if you go through it and you really mark down how far were you from the hole in your approach in the fairway, what was your average proximity to the hole on your putts, and you get a little bit deeper and you start to find tendencies of misses to the right, misses to the left. Was I coming up short? And maybe different ranges, different distances where you were struggling. So, again, you always come off the course and you have a feeling, I think they always have a feeling of, okay, I know what I did wrong. And we've heard that many times. And sometimes it's accurate, but you'd be surprised how many times the objective process of going through and reflecting might reveal something you just weren't aware of. So it's really a reflective process.
Yeah, and it's so important to the growth process, right? And you're talking about growth mindset and wanting to push yourself to those limits. And I think, so many players are so afraid of failing out there that they don't want to look at the truth. They don't want to look in the mirror, right? So that's really difficult. And I think if we can help you with anything, make sure that you're looking in the mirror and looking honestly, because it's only going to help you get better, and it's going to help your process even more. And I think one of the things that it seems like it's a slow thing, but it actually helps speed up everything else when it comes to processing during the round.
No question. Yeah, I mean, you hit it right on the head.
That is.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people don't want to look at it, don't want to look at the reality. I remember my college coach just telling me, you're not an everyday player. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm a good player. Well, the reality was I had to look at it and just accept where I was and figure out what I needed to do to get better. So being honest with yourself, being willing to go through stats and really look deeply and closer at things, working with a coach or doing those kinds of things and just finding your weaknesses is really a separator. And like you said, it will speed up as much as it feels painful or feels counterproductive in some ways. It'll speed up the process of improvement.
Yeah, and that's just so important too. Again, getting them to understand confidence comes from those moments, right?
Yes.
And that's really the ultimate when you start to go, I'm not afraid of that failure. I'm not afraid of knowing who I am as a player right now. Doesn't mean that's who you're going to be later, but it's understanding it. Right now, you are where you are, and I think that's important to own that. And if you own that, that's what the best players do, right? They just know that, hey, they're always trying to get better. It's not like it's a fixed thing, right? It's they're fixed and that's it. No, it's a process of getting better.
For sure, and we keep hearing it over and over from the most highly successful people in all kinds of fields of endeavor, and that's just the mindset they adopted. It just wasn't an innate talent. They adopted that growth mindset. They accepted where they were, and they worked hard. I mean, there's no question.
Yeah. So being out on the golf course, watching them from a tournament perspective as a coach, and we do that with all of our coaches and all of our players, but then understanding like what's next. And I know, a big part of it, you come back and you talk to Tyler about the post, round, things, analysis from a golf perspective, but also what you're seeing and how they're moving and what's going on. So I know as you, ask Tyler different questions about, hey, what is this kid doing? Where is he in his assessments, protocols, if you will.
Sure.
That's important.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we'll those stats can identify tendencies, and then we can, as a coach, we film our juniors in tournaments, and we'll show it to them, and together we'll identify swing tendencies. And again, it's always going to come back to, Tyler's department there, and function dictates form. So hopefully it's a motivator for them to understand, okay, I'm hitting the ball to the right because I'm steep, and I'm steep because of, I can't rotate well, and that comes back to working on my function.
What I'm realizing, listening more to some of the golf perspective here, is that there are a lot of steps to success, right? There are a lot of steps to the process of giving yourself the best opportunity at performing well, and each of these elements has a laundry list of things. I would want to get as organized as possible if I was the athlete and say, okay, I've got my tournament, that's the end goal. These are the things that I need to do at the particular times leading up to that event to make sure that I'm giving myself the best opportunity of succeeding. And I think, the Junior Golf Hub can be a great tool for that, but in general, approaching your performance like you're a professional is a cool mindset to embrace, and really kind of looking at it from a granular perspective of, like you guys were saying, playing the hole backwards. All those different things are, I would imagine a majority of juniors out there haven't necessarily thought of it like that yet. So encourage everybody to keep an open mind, give it an opportunity, and really get out of golf swing and more into playing the game of golf. And how all of these elements, play off of each other.
Yeah. So with that being said, Tyler, as a physical guy,
sure.
I mean, there's the post round. Hey, how do I recover? How do I get ready for the next round? Or maybe it's a 3 or 4 day event. How do I get ready for
as
that?
we said earlier on in the episode, everything physically, a lot of time, it has to take place weeks, months ahead of time. If we're trying to cram last minute, you're not gonna reap the rewards of those efforts when you need them. So nutrition, as Kyle Panic a few weeks ago mentioned, is critical. High protein, high carbohydrates diet after your round to replenish those stores that you used up, especially if it's hot. Making sure your levels of hydration are adequate. You're continuing to drink fluids after the round in preparation for the next day. And again, that's a lifestyle. That's something that's happening, weeks in advance, and now we're in the middle of it. And so, it's just because you're not on the golf course doesn't mean you're not still thinking about performing for that next day. And then, we talk about multi-round events, or in the college scheme, maybe playing 36 holes in one day. you've got to prepare yourself physically to be able to do that well beyond the day of the event. And the expectations are going to have to be adjusted if you're not ready. That's for sure.
And that means going out and practicing and playing in 36-hole events, or playing 36 holes in a day.
I mean,
as you would be
walking
playing.
36 with a bag on your back is completely different than driving in a cart, with your dad in the passenger seat and summing it up. So putting yourself in that competitive mindset in practice. From a physical standpoint, practicing when you eat on the course, practicing, getting a few post-round meals down that are just go-tos, and you have some success with, you feel strong and ready and sharp the next day.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things we see a lot with other sports and other athletes in other sports, is how they do that. But in golf, it's for whatever reason, we kind of forget that, and
we show up and we give it our best shot, but there's so much more to it.
Yeah, there really is. There's no question. I mean, from a stamina standpoint, you talk about walking 12 miles, 13, 14 miles, or doing 36 with 30 pounds on your back, and then swinging and trying to focus. I mean, that's athletic.
And then you've got a 7:30 tee time next morning.
Yeah,
so you better get to bed.
You got to get to bed. You got to recover. And I know we played golf last week, and one of the things I noticed was it was really hot. We were walking, carrying our own bag. Have a hot dog at the turn. And some chips. Probably wasn't the best thing.
That's right.
I noticed that later in the round, it's like losing focus, or just maybe the sodium in the hot dog was really dehydrating me more. And you can't drink enough water to overcome that. So maybe not,
That's
what
why
you
I
eat
went for
out
the chicken sandwich. So.
Yeah, that's good. So again, Tyler, thanks for that recap on that. So Dennis, the last things on as far as tournaments are concerned, obviously we got a lot more to cover, throughout this show. But when it comes to tournaments, right now, what would be some of the takeaways for the audience today?
Yeah, so I think one of the big things, just listening to you guys last week was great. I mean, really signing up in advance, and really, if you talk about, you guys mentioned Michael Phelps, you use that as an example, but if you think about Olympic athletes preparing 4 years in advance and really doing all this work every day with that vision and that visualization that kind of, I think, naturally comes, but really preparing weeks and weeks in advance. So do your own sign-ups. And start this whole process that we've talked about the last 2 weeks of getting ready in all the 5 elements of success. And again, Tyler, thanks for sharing the story, which for sure, I remember feeling those butterflies when I sent the application in. So that's where it all starts.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great stuff. I appreciate that. Andrew, we have any questions for the show?
We have a couple questions today.
Awesome.
This first one's for Nick. You mentioned gapping. What is that?
I think your mic's still on. You're good. You want to come on? Come on in.
Come on in, Nick.
So
Nick was taking a nap. He thought he was gone, so he was just taking a nap.
That's a good question. Gapping is going to refer to how far your clubs go. So keeping track of how far each club goes in the air, carry distance and total distance is something we like to do periodically with the juniors. Early in the year, sometimes it might not go as far as the midsummer. Midsummer, they're swinging a little faster. The weather's a little warmer, ball's going a little further, so we like to keep track of their gapping throughout the year.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
When is the best time to buy new equipment?
Oh, another good question. When is the best time?
It really depends on your tournament schedule, right? Making sure that you're not interfering, that you have the stuff that you need for the tournaments, and then maybe when the season slows down, the off season, you have some time to experiment with some new equipment.
Yeah. Maybe if you're a new golfer, you want to wait till the equipment goes on sale, maybe at the end of the summer. That's another way to, if you're buying your equipment on cost, and we know it's very expensive out there. So, look at what you're doing and how often are you playing. You can buy some really great equipment for a low price, usually near the end of the season.
Yeah, I would say the best time is when you need it, when you need new equipment.
Yeah.
Our next question is, how do you know if your wedge grooves are still in good shape?
All right, that's a good one.
Yeah.
You measure those?
Yeah, well, we don't measure the grooves, but we do measure the spin.
Yeah.
So, that's one of the main things that you want to look at with wedges is the spin rate. And, you really want to keep your grooves clean and dry throughout the round. Make sure you have a nice brush, a nice wet towel to clean it and then dry it off before your wedge shots.
Yeah, that's probably something you see out there with the players. They're seeing, again, from the perspective of watching from the green down to the fairway, you're seeing balls, hit and you think they should spin and not spinning, and
Yeah.
so it's probably
Yeah, we can figure a lot of things out. Getting that perspective and then talking to them afterwards. How'd you hit that? Well, I hit that solid and it didn't spin. So yeah, we can start to get that kind of anecdotal, evidence, and then again look deeper into it.
yeah.
And our last question is, any feedback on ball choices for younger juniors with slower swing speeds? Is lower compression better?
Good question.
Wow, good question.
So
What do you got? What do you see?
it's really interesting. That's a really good question. But the truth is that throughout the round, all of us are going to hit shots at slower swing speeds. You hit a chip shot at a slow swing speed, pitch shot. A lot of shots around the green are at slow swing speed. So you just need something that's the right fit for you and your game. Something that maybe it's the right price, cost effective. There's a lot of really good golf balls out there that can perform at a really good level for a lot of juniors.
Yeah, and I think we talked about it before the show about ball, how it sounds versus how it actually feels. And I think so, one of those, you might hear a ball click off your club and think it's not the right ball for you because it might be too hard. I think that's something that we need to kind of change, and don't look at it from that perspective, because you might find you're missing out on having the right ball just because you heard a sound versus not hearing a sound. So
Yeah.
Absolutely.
yeah, awesome. Any other questions?
No more questions today?
Awesome, Andrew. Well done. You didn't make any mistakes this week. That's great. Anyway, so next week we're going to continue a little bit more on the tournament preparation with Dr. Josh Brandt, talking about visualization, mental preparation, kind of pre, mid, and post self-regulation as well, because that's going to be really important for all you players out there to be able to understand where you're coming from and what it feels like. And I know, Dennis, we talk a lot about that as we go out with players, so I know it would be a great conversation with Dr. Brandt next
absolutely.
week.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so it's good. And again, thanks, guys. Good show.
You got it. Thanks,
I appreciate
Rodney.
you guys coming on. And again,
Absolutely.
thank you guys for watching. And we want to thank our sponsors, the Junior Golf Hub. Make sure you're downloading that app. Get those 1,000 coaches, 2,000 coaches in your pocket. Schools, do your research. Get the app, Junior Golf Hub app. Also, Ethan Allen Preparatory, achieving your greatness in the classroom, on the golf course, and in life. So again, thanks so much for watching. We'll hope to see you next Tuesday at 12 p.m. and enjoy your journey.